as you may know, there's a case before. Well, let me just read to you. This is how the Washington Post puts it. You know that feeling you get when you witness something so shocking, like this Muslim man being beaten, so shocking that it makes you feel the world has gone mad. This happens to me a couple times a day. Even as you, as I do, feel incapable of greeting whatever this incident is with the appropriate outrage, because your outrage storage has been emptied because of so many outrageous things lately. This happens to me on a regular basis now. I no longer can listen to MSNBC when we're in the car. I can't. I listen on Sirius XM. I listen to the Spa channel, New Age music. I can't even listen to rock and roll anymore. Too jumpy, too nervous, too anxious. I said to Kathy this morning when we were having coffee, "Will it happen again?" Kathy said, "What happened again?" I said, "As soon as I wake up, I feel this dread, this sense of, it's beyond anxiety. It's dread. You know what I'm talking. I know you know what I'm talking about, right? Right? Ah! And I lay there in bed, and we have this whole wall of windows that you can look out into the woods in our bedroom. And I lay there, and Kathy's asleep, and one dog is over on the chair, the easy chair that we have in the bedroom, and the other dog is laying around her neck. And I'm awake, and she's not. And I'm looking out the window at whether it's rain or the sun is coming through the trees or what have you. And within seconds of coming awake, this shroud, boom, comes over me. I know you're not my therapist. I understand that. This is not therapy session. I'm just telling you, that's how bad it's become. Just like Paul Waldman, the opinion writer here at the Washington Post, he says, you know that feeling you get from witnessing something so shocking that it makes you feel the world has gone mad, even as you simultaneously feel incapable of greeting it with the appropriate outrage because you've suffered through so many equally outrageous things recently. You know that feeling? That's what I get in the morning. So when Kathy and I are finally awake, we're having coffee, and I'll tell her, I said, yeah, it happened again this morning. I feel this anxiety, or I don't want to necessarily call it depression, because it's not really depression, it's just anxiety. And I know anxiety is about the future, depression is about the past. I understand that. Was and will make me ill. Huxley. Half a gram and I just am. Soma. And I get that. But this is stuff in the now that's driving me crazy. Fucking Trump and these monsters exist in the now. It's now. Waldman says, maybe there's a word in German for this. Whatever that word might be, it's what anyone following the Republican lawsuit seeking to strike down the entire Affordable Care Act is now feeling. The entire Affordable Care Act. The Republicans have obsessed on this, and this filthy pig son of a bitch Trump, of course, picks up on what his base is feeling. If it's anti-Semitism, if it's anti-immigration, if it's anti-poor people, whatever the fuck it is, Trump is right there. The lawsuit is a kind of legal version of what Trump's 2016 candidacy was all about. And in addition to that, everyone knew about Trump's candidacy, that it was both ludicrous and terrifying, but somehow it just keeps chugging on toward some sort of catastrophe. It's coming our way. You can't have this kind of insane, sick, fucked up, psychotic leadership without hitting the edge at some point, and the momentum right over the edge into the abyss. Anyway, what happened yesterday, a 3-judge federal appeals court panel heard oral arguments in this case against the Affordable Care Act. And legal observers came away in that shocked, not shocked state. What we're talking about here. You've suffered so many outrageous things lately that even though you see something as outrageous, you can't seem to process the outrageousness of it. The well is dry. The lawsuit is acknowledged by both Republicans and Democrats to be so unbelievably stupid in its arguments that only the most buffoonishly partisan judge could take it seriously. But apparently, 2 judges on this 3-judge panel in the appeals court are just that. Fucking insane Republicans. One of them was appointed by George W. Bush and one by Trump. The entire Republican Party, having created, endorsed, and promoted this lawsuit, now seems worried that it might succeed, that maybe the Affordable Care Act is going to be struck down. Huh? Why do Republicans care? Because so much of Trump's base relies on what the Affordable Care Act provided to them. They're never going to get health insurance. None of these Yahoo redneck fuckers will ever get health insurance were it not for the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid. And now Trump and the Republicans are blowing it up. Briefly, the Republicans' argument is that since the Supreme Court upheld the Affordable Care Act's individual insurance mandate as a tax, that's what John Roberts ruled in the 5-4 decision that upheld the Affordable Care Act a couple years ago, that Congress has a right to levy taxes, and the Affordable Care Act was a tax. Okay, listen up. The individual insurance mandate was a tax. Because the Supreme Court upheld that, and since the Republican Congress later reduced that tax to 0, that was this last year, they said, well, we're getting rid of the tax. And the idea was to without the tax, the tax that was required if you didn't join up the Affordable Care Act. If they got rid of the tax, nobody would fucking join up, which has not been the way it's happened. It's increased. The number of people joining has increased. But Congress, Republicans, reduced the tax to 0, which made the point moot about the insurance mandate as a tax. If there's no insurance mandate, there's no tax. And the Republicans then said, given that, the entire law must be struck down as unconstitutional. Because, yes, Congress has a right to levy taxes. But if it's declared not a tax by an act of Congress because they throw it out, then the Affordable Care Act has to collapse. That's the basic argument. And as the Washington Post reported, in oral arguments, quote, 2 members of the 3-judge panel, U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, grilled the lawyers representing Democratic-led states in the U.S. House to explain why the Affordable Care Act remains valid. So if this suit succeeds, it would be the most profound upheaval in the history of the American healthcare system. 20 million people likely to immediately lose health coverage. Somewhere between 50 and 130 million will lose protections regarding pre-existing conditions. There will be mass closings of hospitals who will then be deprived of revenue because nobody has any insurance, any money to go to a hospital. Chaos, as the entire regulatory structure of the system is swept away in one fell swoop, and other effects we can't even begin to imagine. It would be a cataclysm. Now, here's what will really drive you mad about all this. Republicans are trying to convince you that they're the ones We're ready to protect you from the effects of their lawsuit. If you listen to this podcast on a regular basis, you know I talk about the insanity swirling around all of us every fucking night. This is a mindfuck. The Republicans are destroying the Affordable Care Act and then telling their brain-dead voters, but we will protect you from the destruction of the Affordable Care Act that we caused. How are they going to do it? They're not. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said, quote, I think the important thing for the public to know is that there's nobody in the Senate not in favor of covering pre-existing conditions. Well, you rat-looking fucking turtle, you're the one who initiated the lawsuit. And one of these judges is the one that you confirmed. He added, and if it were under any of these scenarios to go away, we would act quickly on a bipartisan basis to restore it. Or in Trump's garbled fucking use of English, he said, quote, we will always protect patients with pre-existing conditions very importantly. Let's take a break. When we come back, there's more of this. You need to know about this. It's getting lost all day today. The only fucking thing that when I would switch over from Spa to MSNBC when we were in the car, all I heard when we got home, turned on MSNBC just to see what we had missed briefly, Jeffrey Epstein. Granted, this fucker should have his dick cut off. I agree. Castrate the motherfucker. And I'm not talking about with pills. Use a little old bitty guillotine. Put his Johnson in there and fucking lop it off. It should be that simple. But for MSNBC to have a whole roster of people all fucking day about Jeffrey Epstein. But I digress. I'll be back in a moment. Ah! Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. You have your choice. You can listen to the ranting with the audio podcast or listen and watch me lose control with a video podcast subscription. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.